Have you ever looked at a management job advert and thought, how am I supposed to get management experience when nobody will give me a management role? It's one of the biggest frustrations for aspiring managers. You want to take the next step in your career, but every role seems to ask for experience you don't yet have. The good news is this: you don't need a management title to start developing management skills. In fact, throughout my career, I've worked with and developed aspiring managers. And one thing I've noticed is that the people who get promoted aren't usually the people waiting to be chosen. They're the people already demonstrating leadership before they get the title. In this video, I'll share practical ways you can gain management experience before you're officially a manager and put yourself in a much stronger position when opportunities come along. So let's get started. Stop waiting for permission. One of the biggest mistakes aspiring managers make is waiting. Waiting for a promotion, waiting for someone else to notice them, waiting for the perfect opportunity. The reality is that leadership often starts before the job title. If you're already thinking, that's not my job, then you're probably not demonstrating management potential. Now, that doesn't mean doing everybody else's work. It means looking for opportunities to contribute beyond your immediate responsibilities. For example, supporting new starters, helping solve team problems, taking ownership of projects, sharing ideas for improvement. Managers notice people who step forward, not people who sit back and wait. During my time in learning and development, I worked with a number of service champions. These were general assistants who volunteered to take on additional responsibility by leading conversations about customer service and helping improve the experience our customers received. What's interesting is that on numerous occasions, that role became a launchpad into supervisory and management positions. Not because being a service champion automatically made them a great leader, but because it gave them the opportunity to take ownership, influence others, and work with the team to achieve a common goal. They started to see the impact they could have when they stepped forward and took responsibility. And one thing that always stood out to me was that nobody forced them to do it. They put themselves forward because they genuinely wanted to make a difference. And that's exactly the kind of behaviour managers notice. Not waiting to be asked, but actively looking for ways to contribute and add value. Learn to lead without authority. One of the biggest shifts into management is influencing people when you can't simply tell them what to do. Ironically, this is something you can practice before becoming a manager. Can you gain buy-in from colleagues, help people solve problems, support others, or influence decisions? Leadership isn't always about authority. Sometimes it's about credibility. The people who become effective managers often build influence long before they gain formal responsibility. And if you can influence people without a management title, you'll be much more effective when you eventually get one. Volunteer for responsibility. If you want management experience, look for opportunities to take responsibility. That could include leading a project, maybe training colleagues, running a team briefing, coordinating an initiative, or organising process improvement. A lot of aspiring managers underestimate how valuable these experiences are. When promotion opportunities arise, managers often ask, can this person handle responsibility? The best way to answer that question is to demonstrate it before you're asked. One of the best examples I've seen of somebody taking responsibility before they had a management title was a barista I worked with early in my career. Without being asked, she started taking responsibility for training new colleagues. She took an interest in stock management. She came up with sales initiatives and ideas to help improve the business. What's interesting is that if you asked her at the time whether she wanted to become a supervisor or a manager, she probably would have said no. She wasn't chasing a promotion. She was focused on doing a great job, taking ownership and making a positive difference. Over time, her commitment and attitude created opportunities. We were able to persuade the client to invest in her development and promote her into a supervisory role. After I left the site, her growth continued. She went on to become a deputy manager and later stepped into an interim general manager position to cover maternity leave. Now, I sometimes describe that as one of my greatest successes in developing a leader. But if I'm honest, that's probably not quite right. It was her success. She cared. She took responsibility. She developed other people. She consistently went above and beyond without asking for a promotion. So what credit can I take? Probably not a huge amount. Yes, I was able to coach her, support her, empower her, and create opportunities. But ultimately, she did the hard work. And that's exactly the point. Opportunities often come to people who demonstrate leadership before they have the title, not after. Develop your people skills. A common misconception is that management is mainly about technical expertise. It's not. The longer you spend in leadership, the more you realise management is about people. Can you listen effectively, communicate clearly, give constructive feedback, build relationships, and handle disagreements professionally? These skills can all be developed before becoming a manager. In fact, some of the strongest managers I've worked with weren't necessarily the most technically gifted people. They were the people others naturally trusted and respected, and that's often built through consistent behaviour over time. Start thinking like a manager. This is perhaps the biggest shift of all. Employees often focus on, how do I do my job well? Managers think, how do I help the team succeed? It's a different perspective. When issues arise, try asking yourself, what's the bigger picture? What impact does this have on the team? What would I do if I were the manager? This doesn't mean second guessing your manager. It means developing commercial and operational awareness. The sooner you start thinking like a manager, the easier the transition becomes. One of the biggest light bulb moments I had as a leader came when I realised I couldn't be in 3 places at once. At the time, yes, I was a trainee manager working on a large site spread across multiple buildings. We had a restaurant and a coffee bar in one building, conference facilities in others, and vending areas spread across the site. In my early days, I tried to be everywhere. If something needed doing, I'd jump in. If there was a problem, I'd go and solve it. If there was a task I knew I was good at, I'd often get involved myself. And to be honest, it felt productive. Then came a day where we had several high-profile functions happening at the same time, alongside all the normal day-to-day operations. Suddenly I realised something. I physically couldn't be everywhere. More importantly, I couldn't mentally be everywhere either. No matter how hard I worked, there simply weren't enough hours, and there certainly weren't enough versions of me. That's when I realised I needed to support the team in a different way. Instead of diving into individual tasks, I started taking what I call a helicopter view of the operation. I focused on planning the day, what needed to happen, who needed to be involved, How would we communicate? And what were the risks? And perhaps most importantly, who could I trust to take ownership of the different areas? Rather than getting absorbed in one part of the business, especially an area I was comfortable in, I was able to move around the operation, check in with people, remove obstacles, and provide support where it was needed most. Now, the stress didn't magically disappear, and I was still nervous about how the day would go, but the day was a success. What felt strange was that I wasn't as hands-on as I would normally have been. Yet at the same time, it was incredibly rewarding to see the team deliver. And I think that's an important lesson for aspiring managers. Leadership isn't about doing everything yourself. It's about creating the conditions for other people to succeed. And just to be clear, this wasn't about stepping back and abandoning responsibility. In many ways, it was the opposite. It was about being available to everyone rather than being tied up doing one thing myself. Seek feedback and development. One of the fastest ways to grow is to actively seek feedback. Ask, what am I doing well? What skills should I develop? What would make me ready for management? Many aspiring managers never ask these questions. The result? They spend years guessing. Feedback gives you a roadmap. Ken Blanchard said feedback is the breakfast of champions, and he's right. Development becomes much easier when you know where to focus. And if your organisation offers leadership programs, mentoring, apprenticeships or development workshops, take advantage of them. Investing in yourself is rarely wasted. If you're waiting for management experience before applying for management opportunities, you might be looking at it the wrong way. Management experience isn't just something you gain after promotion. It's something you can start building today by taking responsibility, developing people skills, influencing others, seeking feedback, and thinking like a manager. By doing these, you'll be putting yourself in a much stronger position when those opportunities arise. And remember, the people who get promoted the fastest are rarely the ones waiting to become managers. They're usually the ones already demonstrating management potential before they have the title. If you found this video useful, please consider liking it and subscribing to the channel. In my next video, I'll be sharing what I believe every new manager should focus on during their first 90 days in role. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again in the next one.